And now we continue the story of Mr. Fallik.
Okay, so we stopped where I talked about the fact that I trained on a mobile radar set, which was scheduled to participate in invasions. That was in Florida. And after we finished the training down here, it was in the Tampa area. I spent a lot of time in Florida. We went by troop train from Florida to Seattle, Washington. That is one long trip by troop train. You could not get off the train. It was supposed to be, the travel by military groups were class secret. We stopped on occasion to get more provisions, food. We ate on the train. We slept in the seats. There were not enough berths for people to sleep in. It took almost a week to go from Florida to Seattle, Washington. And we spent a couple of days in Seattle, Washington, then boarded a ship. It was a converted cargo ship, a tramp steamer, and we took off, and I expected to see a convoy from horizon to horizon. U.S. Navy ships, battleships to convoy us, to accompany us to wherever we were going. We didn't know where we were going. We never saw another ship. I was shocked. And we arrived at Pearl Harbor, 1944. It was bombed in 41, December the 7th, 1941. And after we arrived there, they took me up to the northern shore on the island of Oahu. That's where Honolulu is, and Waikiki Beach. And here on the northern shore was the fixed station version of the same radar I trained in, the British version. And that's the set. They had a crew there already. They took that crew off, and I was part of the new crew. The mobile version of the radar that I trained in Florida, never saw again. And I spent 18 months on that radar set, 7 days a week. It was very good duty. I saw no physical action. I fired rifles at the range to get practice. They did that. But on the North Shore, we were located right on the ocean. When we were not on duty, we'd go swimming in the ocean. I really couldn't complain. I wanted to be home, but considering what other guys had to go through, invading Saipan, Kwajalein, Iwo Jima, and whatnot, with the Japanese firing them, it was just great duty. And 1945, our president was Harry Truman, who I thought was a great president. Franklin D. Roosevelt died years before that, a few years before. And Harry Truman was vice president, so he became president. And he authorized dropping the atomic weapons. One on Hiroshima in Japan, one Nagasaki, and the Japanese gave up. That was in the fall of the winter of 45. February 46th, I was discharged from the Army. They wanted me to stay on, but I wasn't interested in staying on. And February 46, I went in 43 February, I got out in 46, so 3 years. And I went home and went back to work in the Jersey area where my love was. And that time, I worked with a group doing research and development on radar, since I'd done so much in radar. By the way, the radar set in Oahu, I was a maintenance chief. In the year and a half or so that we were there, we never had a failure, except one time. And I told us when I spoke before the group, there was a failure, and I pinpointed the failure. It was to a power supply for the receiver. I took the power supply out, and what did I find in there? A field mouse. It shorted a circuit. I removed the field mouse, put everything back, and that was it. So for 18 months, 7 days a week, we had different crews. You didn't spend 24 hours a day at the radar set. And so anyhow, I went back to the government, and my wife, we got engaged while I was in Oahu. You wonder how that was. My mother gave my wife the engagement ring, and we were engaged by letter, by correspondence. When I got out in 46, as I said, I went to work for the government again, and we got married July 4th, 1946, July 4th, in Newark, New Jersey. The reason we picked Newark, New Jersey was because her family lived South Jersey. Most of my family lived in New York, was sort of halfway. It was a big wedding. I had a tuxedo, a big gown, and a band, big wedding. And we selected a place in Newark that had air conditioning. It was July 4th. We had a big mob of people there. The air conditioning broke down. It was hotter than heck at the wedding. Anyhow, we got married in 46, and in 47, our daughter was born, July 19th, 1947, Cheryl, who passed away in January 2012 from pancreatic cancer. That's one of the worst types of cancers you can get. And I need to talk a little bit about her now. We had moved, she did her undergraduate and graduate work at Syracuse University. And she taught in the same school for 30 years or so. She was a teacher, and then she was a facilitator. And she retired, and she had about 10 or 12 years of happy retirement. And she developed this cancer, and but she was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award for her work in trying to eliminate and reduce discrimination, discriminating against Afro-Americans for religion, culture, color, sexual orientation. And she volunteered, and she worked very hard at it, and she received a Lifetime Achievement Award. While she was in the hospital at the end, the head of the organization came and told her that, and told her, I was standing right there, that she was not given the award because she was in the hospital with cancer. They had decided before she ever knew that she had cancer that she was going to get it. And she was going to get the award, I think, in Syracuse, something like January 15th of 2012. And we were hoping that she would survive until then, but she died on the 7th of January, so she never was there. But her two boys were there. She had two sons, and her two husbands. She was divorced from the first husband, who, with the first husband, she had two boys. When they got married, they didn't want any children. And when my daughter got to be about 32 or so, she said, now or never. So they had two boys. Now there's an effort to put a memorial to Cheryl at the school that she worked at. And we're almost there fund-wise. My son-in-law and very close friends of my daughter had to work with the Board of Education, the city, the county, to get approval to do something at the school that she taught at, and they finally got it approved. So this spring and this summer, there's going to be a memorial to Cheryl Aiello, my daughter. So we moved to Rome, New York, which is way upstate, cold snow, because when I was working in Jersey, there was no Air Force. And I was in the Army, there was no Air Force. It was the Army Air Corps. And Harry Truman and the administration decided that the Air Force should be created with the same power as the Navy and the Army. We were sitting on Army, we had a laboratory sitting on Army territory, so they moved us to Rome, New York, to an Air Force base. We didn't live on the Air Force base, but the laboratory was at this Air Force base, Griffiths Air Force Base, town of about 40,000 people. And we lived there for 22 years. And by the way, before we moved, my son arrived. My daughter was born in 47, my son was born in 49, and we moved up to Rome, New York in 1951. My son was 2 years old and my daughter was 4, and I spent 22 years there. My daughter, as I said, went to Syracuse. My son graduated Cornell. I was happy as you can't believe how happy I was to pay tuition at Syracuse and Cornell because they were going to college. I was delighted to pay it. I was. And so I worked up, we lived up in Rome for 22 years, and I was promoted rather rapidly. Maybe it's because of my good looks, I don't know. I became branch chief. I had about 90 people working for me, doing research, radar research development. And we came up with new radar concept, one of which is being used universally by the Navy, by the Army. It was a great achievement.
Anybody want coffee or it's cold, hot?
I'm okay, thank you.
Joe, you want something?
Would you like
I'm
some
okay.
water
I'm
or
okay.
some tea?
You're okay, I'm okay.
Okay. So I had 90 people working for me, engineers, scientists, clerical personnel, secretaries, whatnot. And we lived up there for 22 years, and I decided to retire in 1973. I had not reached my 53rd birthday yet, and I retired in June of 1973. And I've been retired ever since. But I also was retarded, so I started subbing. I started subbing in the winter of 73 74. We were living in Miami Beach with my wife's mother because they were building this place here. We couldn't get in. And I'd go to Coral Gables to golf, and we'd go to dinner, whatever. And one day I noticed an advertisement in the Miami Herald that the Board of Education in Dade County needed substitute teachers. And the only requirement was that you had a degree from an accredited college or university. So I said, what the heck, I try it. And I received certification for substitute teaching, and I also applied for full-time teaching in biology, science, or math. So I received conditional certification for full-time teaching. I lacked 2 courses in education, but if I found a principal that wanted to hire me, I could go to work and take 2 courses. But I had no intention of being a full-time teacher. So I started subbing in Dade County, all kinds of schools in Dade County, the winter of 73, 74. And then our place here became available. We moved in 74, and I started subbing. We passed the school Pines Middle as you came here. I subbed at Pioneer Middle. I subbed at Miramar High. I subbed at Hollywood Hills High, MacArthur High. I subbed at Perry Middle. I subbed at elementary schools. I did a lot of subbing. And then one day I was asked to sub at Whispering Pines about 21 years ago. And I stopped going to any other school. I found it a lot easier at Whispering Pines than having a class of young kids, elementary, pester you. And I had the patience, but going to high school, get a lot of smart alecks. In middle school, kids were the worst. I went to Whispering Pines, and the principal there was a prince of a guy, Craig Anderson. Did you know him? He came to the Thanksgiving fair. great principal. He used to say, "Thanks, Joe, for coming in." And I found it a lot easier at Whispering Pines than the other schools because class size was much smaller. There was a para in there with a teacher, and there was a PIP team. So it was easier. And so I've been subbing there for about 21 years. I'm probably the oldest sub alive.
Definitely our oldest.
Anyhow,
You're part of our
so
dysfunctional
I
family.
A little bit about my son. Son graduated Cornell. Alan is his name. And he went to law school here at the University of Miami and became an attorney. And he lives in Coral Springs. And he fathered 2 sons. So I have 4 grandsons. 2 of them are unmarried, and I'm going to introduce them to you, Erica.
Ooh.
Now, one of them is 34 or 35. He's had 2 love affairs. They didn't work out. I don't think he was interested anymore. Mm-hmm. The other one is a teacher at a private school in Dade County, Miami-Dade Country School, and he loves it. And he's a bachelor also. My daughter's 2 sons are both married. The oldest one fathered a child in June of 2012. She's a year and a half old, but she's already graduated college. We get videos on Facebook of her. She's just a beautiful child. And she's going to have a sibling in June of this year. They'll be 2 years apart. So that's our first great-grandchild. And we'll have another one coming in June. My grandson in California, who's married to the cosmopologist, they don't want children, so those are my 4 grandchildren. They're great guys. Brian, who's up in the Boston area, my oldest, graduated, went to Coral Springs High, and graduated Cornell like his dad did. And he's a computer scientist up in the Boston area. His brother is the one that teaches here in Dade County. He graduated Florida. He was a Gator. And he took a master's in FAU, I think. He got a master's at FAU. My daughter's eldest son graduated University of Buffalo. And her youngest son graduated University of Syracuse. Okay, so let's see. What did I leave out? I've been subbing, I've been golfing. We have a private golf course here. That's one. When we moved in here, we came down here. Let's see. My son joined the law school, and a sister-in-law knew that we were coming here to live. My wife had a brother who lived here, and his wife saw advertisement for this place. Private golf course, and knew I was a golfer. A goofer also. So they put a refundable deposit down. And when we came down after I retired in '73, I went to other condominium complexes like Inverary and Carriage Hills and Aventura, and I decided this was the place for me. And I think it was the right decision. The private golf course is beautiful. My clubs are stored there. I have a foot locker, keep my shoes. It's a gated community. We have 2 roving security cars. We have security 24 hours a day. We have a restaurant here. We have a playhouse for shows. And we run it ourselves. Other condominiums have management teams, management contractors. But we elect our own president. We run it ourselves. And while there were problems in doing that, it's much better. It's kept beautifully, and we're happy here. We've been here for 40 years. Let's see. My father died in 1974 after he retired from being a waiter, he had accumulated a massive fortune, $16,000 after working all his life, $16,000, and he got Social Security, and my mother got some, although she didn't work. As a spouse, you can get Social Security, and he was a World War I veteran, my father, even though he came over from Poland. And World War veterans, all World War veterans, whether disabled or not, received big $40 a month pension. So they lived on their Social Security and they had no pension from the waiters, being in the waiters union. But he had that much money, so they used to come down here in the winter time to get away from the cold weather, and they stay in South Beach. South Beach had hotels right on A1A, which catered to folks like my mother and father, where they'd rent an apartment, a one-bedroom with a kitchen, and there was a porch. You could see the ocean, the beach right across. It was wonderful, and they came down. Didn't cost that much money, so their $16,000 went down a little bit. And my father came down in October '74. He died of a heart attack down here. And my mother died in 2001. She was 91 years old. She died 17 years after my father did. Her last few years were not good. She lives up north, next to Coney Island, called Brighton Beach. And I had gotten her 24-hour help. So she had help 24 hours a day. And she fell down and this and that. And so she passed away in 2001. I think she wanted to go badly. She had no life. My father's folks and my mother's folks, I guess. I know not too much about my mother's folks. They're gone. My father's folks, definitely, the Holocaust took them, the Germans. My father was lucky to come over here when he did. He had one sister that escaped also. Somehow or other, a German or an Austrian officer took a liking to her, and he sent her to Innsbruck to be a maid to his children. And she passed as a non-Jew, and she escaped.
Wow.
She'd been married, but her husband was killed, her mother and father. And she migrated after the war. She got down to Italy, and she met a man there, not Jewish, and they got together, and they wound up in Sao Paulo, Brazil. They couldn't get into the States. She knew she had a brother here, my father, but they couldn't get into the States. So at that time, so they made a living in Sao Paulo, and then my aunt was able to get over here, and she stayed with my parents, and then she got her husband over here, and they opened a booth in the jewelry exchange, 47th and 5th Avenue, and made a ton of money. Selling pearls, jewelry, buying, and but she passed away, and her husband passed away. And my father had a brother who also was in Argentina. Interesting. He fell in love with a girl who had the same first name as his mother. And in Orthodox Jewish religion, it was not permitted. Because the name, when somebody passed away, then if I had a child, I would name the child after somebody like that. So they wouldn't approve him marrying this girl, so they eloped and went to Argentina, Rio de Janeiro. No, the capital of Argentina. Rio is in Brazil. Whatever. And they raised a family of 3. And My father once took a trip down there in the days of propeller planes to see his brother Paul. He hadn't seen him for years and years, and my father was not a good airplane rider. He got sick in a car if you made too many stops. He went down a long trip. He spent a great time down there, and he came back. He saw his brother, and so there are in Argentina there are some Falliks down there like my name.
Do you think they remained Orthodox?
Pardon?
Do you think they remained Orthodox?
No, they're not Orthodox. No, they're not Orthodox at all. No, you know, the Jewish people, when they came to this country, if they were Orthodox and they came, most of them couldn't remain Orthodox. They had to make a living. They had to work on the Sabbath, and so there was Orthodox, and then conservative Judaism, and then Reformed. The Reformed mostly in English. Orthodox is in Hebrew. Conservative is basically in Hebrew also. To satisfy their needs to support a family, they had to work Sabbath, and they didn't worry about it. They had to do what they do, because the Lord will forgive them. I guess that's about it. I talked about my son, my daughter, my brother who died. Both of my brothers are gone. I'm the last remaining vestige of a generation. And, you know, I was able to talk to my brother Seymour, who was 2 years younger than me, but he remembers a lot about our growing up. We used to chat. He lived in Florida, but I have nobody anymore that I could say, I forgot this name, and he would say, yeah, so this is good that I will leave it to my progeny. And I'm finished.
Thank you, Mr. Fallik.